bullish outlook from some of these oil field contractors, SLB, Baker Hughes, Halliburton, and a lot of them mentioning how much natural gas was going to be part of their business. I feel like we heard less of that today from these oil majors, even though some of them are moving into the space. Yeah, what's the thinking there? What's your take? Kevin just got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, the majors are interested in gas, but they want liquefied natural gas. They want the big projects that they can ship around the world. They're not too interested in sort of the local market for gas, because the value is a lot lower. But definitely big projects where they can ship gas around the world.
Okay.
Very, very gung-ho.
Got it. Kevin, we got to run. Kevin Crowley and Simone Foxman, so appreciate it. This is Bloomberg. In case you missed it, our latest Business Week episode podcast features Josh Rosner, Managing Director at Graham Fisher, and Gretchen Morgensen, Senior Financial Reporter for NBC News. They talked about their new book, These Are the Plunderers, How Private Equity Runs America. You can download it now at Bloomberg.com or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, coming up, everybody, tracking female CEOs. There's a metric. It compares them with those individuals named John. We'll explain.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Generally cloudy skies for the rest of today as some rain begins to move in here. Tonight, rainy and breezy. Some of the rain could be moderate to briefly heavy, a low near 50. Periods of rain and breezy weather on Saturday near 60. Few leftover showers at night. And just cloudy on Sunday morning with afternoon rain redeveloping though near 60. Showers and breezy weather on Monday near 65. This is Gary Best with your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Bloomberg 1130 brings you the names that move markets. Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan.
The banking system reflects the economy in America, and we hope it's in good shape, and it is.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
We're all aware that there are choppy waters coming for the global economy.
Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy.
The debt ceiling vote cannot pass the floor without dealing with the budget.
The names that matter. The news you need. Bloomberg 1130. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com.
When they're investigating, we can't stop watching. This month on BritBox. Sit back, relax, and enjoy watching the detectives. Discover Britain's most bingeable mysteries, including the brand new season of Grace, the hit series based on the books by best-selling author Peter James. Unwind with the detectives you could watch all night long. Stream them all now exclusively on BritBox. Endlessly intriguing. Start your free trial at BritBox.com.
Geopolitical risk, changing regulation, economic uncertainty. EY can help you identify the risks that matter. When it comes to the complexities you're facing, it isn't just about the numbers. To keep ahead of changing business needs and evolving regulations, CFOs, boards, and audit committees need critical insights to make better decisions. For more insights that matter, visit ey.com/beyond the numbers.
Bridge Bank helps breakthrough ideas actually break through and remains dedicated to providing financial solutions to the risk takers, the game changers, and the disruptors, those committed to making the world a better place. Bridge Bank has been providing financial solutions to technology and innovation companies from inception to IPO and beyond for over 2 decades through its national network of banking teams and offices. Bridge Bank, a division of Western Alliance Bank, member FDIC. Bridge Bank, be bold, venture wisely.
Interactive Brokers charges margin loan rates from 5.33% to 6.33%. Their clients can also earn extra income by lending their fully paid shares of stock. Join Interactive Brokers clients from 200 plus countries and territories to invest in stocks, options, futures, funds, and bonds globally. Minimize your costs to maximize your returns. Rates subject to change. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. It's 4:21 on Wall Street. We check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. It is on to the trading month of May. Where has this year gone? We begin with a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. U.S. bank deposits up $21.1 billion in the week ending April 19th. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all higher today, capping a winning week for the U.S. equity market for the week. S&P was up 0.9%. Dow this week up 0.9%. NASDAQ this week also higher by 1.3%. Stocks extended a rally today as investors wrestled with strong corporate earnings against concerns about regional banks and inflation. First Republic shares today, they plunged. We had shares of First Republic down 43.3%. S&P ended the week at 4169, up 34 points, up by about 0.8%. The Dow today also up by 0.8%, while NASDAQ today was up 84. That's a gain of 0.7%. The 10-year yield 3.43%, with the 2-year yielding 4.03%. Spot gold, $19.88 the ounce. Little change there, up by $1 today. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.7%, $76.79 a barrel. Ben and Jerry's, the ice cream brand owned by Unilever, says it has agreed to terms for a unionization process proposed by workers at its flagship store in Burlington, Vermont. And that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, I want a hot fudge sundae, Charlie Pellet.
With no doubt about that. Would love that, too, without a doubt.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So this next story we talked about, Maddie and I, this week already on air, is about how female CEOs finally outnumber those named John. And if you think it's a funny or odd way to measure progress, well, we've got our Bloomberg News team of Matt Boyle, Senior Management and Workplace Reporter at Bloomberg News, in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, along with Bloomberg News Managing Diversity Reporter Jeff Green on Zoom from Michigan to explain it all out. This story in the latest edition of the WorkShift Weekly newsletter. Gentlemen, great to have you here with us. Matt, let me kick it off with you. Who knew that CEO's name John was actually a metric to measure we women against?
Yes, well, it's funny. The New York Times did a piece on this a long time ago, like 2015, and it sort of struck a nerve, certainly, and, things were not much better then. They were much worse, actually, and it did so well. They actually revisited the topic, and they broadened it beyond just CEOs named John to academics, movie producers, politicians, and senators named, John. And so a Stanford PhD student got in touch with me a few months ago, and I was like, you guys remember this story? I've been looking at maybe recreating it. And we said, that's interesting. Do you have data? She showed us her data, and then we're like, well, we can we've got our own data here at Bloomberg. So we put it all together and started talking about it. And you're so right. It is such a dubious milestone, but it really kind of shows, like, when you put names behind statistics, it really kind of puts it into a different frame of reference, right? I mean, it's more than just numbers. It's names of people.
Yeah. It's so cool that she reached out to you and you collaborated with this PhD student on getting this data.
Yeah, it was funny. I guess she read the first story in the Times back when she was in high school, perhaps, and it still stuck with her. But she studies, part of her doctoral research is about women in STEM roles. So, really up her alley, and just reached out to us. And we said, we could probably do something with this.
All right, Mr. Green, we haven't forgotten you. Come on in on the conversation. So are we making progress finally?
Well, that's the struggle with telling these stories. I could say, hey, 41, it's a record. Or I could say 8%, that really sucks. And neither of them is really helpful. So we're kind of trying to figure out, how do you make this interesting in a way that people might be able to, understand it? And this is a very effective way that, because if we get another woman in the CEO role next month, we'll have a new record. It'll still not be very great, but, you got to figure out how do you put it in context? And this is a really interesting way that people can relate to.
Well, I think it's cool in the good news category that it's not just women outnumbering men named John. It's women outnumbering men of any name, right, Matt?
Yes, although when we started playing around with the data, we said, okay, what about Tom, Dick, and Harry, which is sort of the stand-in for the everyman, and if you add up the Johns, plus the Toms, Dicks, and Harrys, then, they do outnumber the women. So, of course, so many names, but what we really thought was...
And then there's the non-Western names, right?
Exactly. That was one great point that Jeff was able to figure out, was that there's just the number of, let's say, non-traditional, non-Western, non-biblical names among CEOs in the S&P 500 has risen quite a bit. So that's a good sign. Regardless of the gender, we need fewer Johns and Matts and Jeffs and, maybe some people with some different names getting in there.
I got to say, Jeff, We've had lots of conversations about this in terms of women in the top spots, and I feel like, until we stop counting, once we can do that, we'll finally feel like there's progress. But it's interesting how long we've been talking about this and all the initiatives, certainly at companies that have been put in place to kind of push it even further. It's amazing that we're still battling.
Well, there's something really interesting that happened here because we looked, over history, the most we could find in the 9 years we looked at was there were 33 Johns one year. And so when women are at 32 or 31, which they had been bumping along for a while, you could still conceive of a year because John's on an upsurge, so maybe John's going to come back. But now we have 41. There's never been a name, and there probably never will because of the reasons we just talked about, the de-Westernization of names as well. When there's been a single name that was 41, and if something happened just recently in the last year, 10 more women, it's kind of unprecedented.
Yeah.
And yet still not that exciting.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because as you guys just explained, so it's just a case of not as many Johns out there, rather than maybe really, really significant progress for women.
Yeah, which is still something.
40 is a big deal, though. I just want to make that point, that 40 is something we've never seen before. Not even close. I mean, it's not 50-50, as Matt pointed out in one of our drafts, but it's a big deal that we hit 40.
You both cover this very broadly. I know that, Jeff, you cover it from the diversity perspective, and Matt, of course, you are our workplace expert. Throwing this to you first, Matt, what are some of the headwinds that are newer that you've reported on that are preventing women from getting to these top positions in the workplace?
Well, it's not just preventing women, it's preventing any sort of new CEOs, right? I mean, we really thought the pandemic and all the changes and the breakdown of so many norms, long-held norms in the workplace is going to usher in a new era of leadership. And really, has it? You see some hot new CEOs coming into force, but have boards of directors really changed much? No, and it's the boards of directors, the governance committees that really determine who is going to be the CEO. So whether it's a Jennifer Rumsey at Cummins taking the place of a guy named Tom, by the way,
or
exactly, I just think we really need just a new era of leadership in general, whether or not it is women or foreign-born, and that's one thing I really hope we will see in the coming years. Maybe it's going to be a little bit slower than, let's say, the shift to remote work or some of the other things that we've seen take place, but yeah, it would be good to see.
We talked with an individual over at Deloitte. They do an annual survey, have since the pandemic, about women specifically, and they showed that a lot of women were still leaving the workforce, just kind of wanted more flexibility, needed more support, and even giving up progress in their careers. And that's Jeff, that continues to be a problem. And I do think we thought the pandemic was going to change it, that we could be more flexible and it would be more supportive of women, but it's not necessarily playing out that way.
Well, Matt puts me in the opposition of being the less cynical person.
Somebody's got to do it, Mr. Green.
And something that's going on that's been kind of surprising me, I can't quite figure it out, is we are also in this sort of unprecedented run of women being added to the S&P 500 boards. This is our third straight month with more than a dozen new positions, and we haven't seen this kind of gains in 5 years probably. And I mean, one of the key things is sometime this year, the percentage of women on boards in the S&P 500 will pass 33%, unless it just comes to a screeching halt, and that's supposed to be an important number, and that could be a catalyst for some of these things, and that may also explain why we have 41, female CEOs in the S&P. There is some, when it stops being so unusual to see a woman in that job, it becomes more ordinary. Like you said, we're a long way from not counting, but we're getting to the point where counting is kind of getting tiresome, and maybe things can start to happen.
Let me ask you guys, is this one area where ESG, and I think about governance, right? You can count and look at a board and know if there's diversity or if there's more women, and if it really is a mix. And I wonder, despite all the questioning about ESG as an investment and kind of going through a reckoning, I do wonder, Matt, where you can really change the diversification of a board, you can see it, and then as Jeff mentioned, a diversified board is leading to maybe more diversified, higher ranks at a company.
Yeah, it's funny. One thing that Jeff and I wrote about last year was that maybe a reason we're seeing more women on boards is that boards of directors are finally adding people with HR and experience running a workforce. Oh my God, who would have thought that that's actually something? No, yeah, exactly. Usually they're just like, give me an expert in crypto, give me an expert in, China or something like that. But now they're saying, my goodness, we don't understand what's going on with our workforce. Maybe we should have someone on the board who's actually run a workforce before. And more often than not, obviously
such a good
chief
point.
HR officers are certainly skewed more female than male. So that's a good way to certainly diversify your boards. There's other reasons though, but that's one thing we picked up on last year.
I keep thinking of our conversation I had with Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit, who stepped aside after George Floyd and left the board and said, I want to replace it with a black male, just wanting more diversity on his board. And I do wonder about the role of kind of white men, Jeff, and just got about 20 seconds, that can play in creating more diversity and say, I got to step aside.
Well, that's an interesting point. We also looked last year at the number of boards where the majority are from underrepresented groups. So lumping everyone together, it's a surprising number. Target had tipped over that way. So there are white guys are retiring, and they are being replaced not just by women, but people of color. The same thing we found in the names. And it's hard to see. I mean, that's the problem with diversity is we can see gender, we can't still see race very well.
Yeah.
So it may be happening outside of our view.
I can't wait till we measure male CEOs against female CEOs named Jane. I'm just looking forward to that point. All right, guys, we got to run. Thank you so much. Matt Boyle of Bloomberg News and Jeff Green, of course, of Bloomberg News as well. All right, we got to go off to World and National News. Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Carol. Ukraine is picking up the pieces after 23 Russian missiles were fired at populated areas earlier today. Ukraine says its air defenses downed all but 2 of the missiles, but one of them caused severe damage to an apartment complex in Ymca, killing at least 23 people, including 4 children. The U.S. is condemning the attack.
This is another example in a long line of examples of Russia's brazen disregard of Ukrainian civilians and Ukrainian life.
The State Department's Vendit Patel. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries says the debt ceiling bill passed by majority House Republicans and sent to the Senate is not serious, responsible legislation.
They produced a ransom note and said, pass our irresponsible Default on America Act or else we're going to default.
And Jeffries